I'll be very okay. So this is a first name for Yankel Benish Ben Frida and Ol Cholim of Klal Yisrael. Then if you guys want to insert a name or two before I start.
Leah Masha Basara, Yaakov Dov ben Yeladina, David Mir ben Alta.
Okay, so interesting from Parshat Shoftim. One of the things to discuss, because this is what we did. The parsha from last week was Parshat Shoftim, and one of the things that's discussed is about a Jewish king. Now, a Jewish king is not like any other king, and I just had a thought which I'll give after this when I give you the info. So, a Jewish king has to write two Sefer Torahs. One he carries with him at all times. Another one he keeps in the treasury of the state, or I don't know where that would be. And it says here, also he mustn't have too many wives, so that they don't make his heart go astray. He shall likewise not accumulate very much silver and gold. When the king is established on his royal throne, he must write a copy of the Torah, as I've said, and what it says is also, he will then learn when he carries the Torah with him wherever he goes. He'll learn one of the Sefer Torahs. He'll be in awe of Hashem and carefully keep every word of this Torah and their rules. And he'll also not begin to feel superior to his brethren, and will not stray from the mandate to the right, to the left. He and his descendants will have a long reign in the midst of Israel. So it's a quote unquote from this excellent Chumash called the Living Torah. So yeah, so it goes to the continues with the idea that judges must judge and adjudicate cases based on justice alone, not on sentiment, and not feel sorry for a person who's underprivileged, or feel kavod for a wealthy person. They must judge the law as in its pure form. And with a king, one thing about a Jewish king also, what I just thought about, and I'll finish with this, is that we're not like the Goyim. We are different, and we're different, and that's just the way it is. Unfortunately, I years ago, when I wasn't as involved as I am now, I went to a engagement party of a friend of mine who was engaged to a Afrikaans non-Jewish woman, and I saw the family there, and they're nice people, but we're different, and that's just the way it is. And Rabbi Tatz even says, if you can't see it, some people will know. Like we can see it, but we are just different. And a Jewish king is not the same as any other king. And it goes back to this: we're a nation that stands alone, and that's where the whole difference thing comes in. And you either see it or you don't. So just wanted to give that thought across.
Good.
Listen, can I just add something? I actually heard a very good insight. I'll be quick. It's a second. Just a quick comment. When the king, one of the things that Am Yisrael can learn from the king having two Sefer Torahs, one at home and one that he takes out with him on the road with him, is that it's the same with Am Yisrael. When you go out and you implement the Torah, a lot of people implement the Torah when they go out. They're on their best behavior, but when they go home, they don't follow the Torah. Then they start, speaking trash to their wives, and if it's not in public, they behave differently, and that's why you got to have the two Torahs. That you behave the same way that you behave in public is the way you behave is the same way you should behave at home, and vice versa.
Excellent point, actually. Excellent point. Okay, so guys, what we were dealing with was from the following brisa in the 110th daf, is that basically we were talking about this concept in Numbers by Midbar, chapter 18, verse 8 to 19, and it all began with the general statement, then it specified the various gifts, and finally concludes with another general statement. So you've got this klau or prat or klau. So generalization, specification, generalization. And what does it say? Hashem spoke to Aaron, all the holies of the children of Israel have I given you for distinction. Then the succeeding verse specifies each gift individually, and the final verse contains this general statement: everything that is separated from the holies I have given to you and to your sons and daughters with as an eternal portion. It's an eternal salt covenant before Hashem for you and your offspring with you. Now, it obviously ends off with this whole format in Leviticus, Vayikra, chapter 2, verse 13. There's a lot of emphasis on salt, right? It says you've got to salt your every meal offering with salt. You may not discontinue the salt of your God's covenant from upon your meal offering. On your every offering shall you offer salt. That's word for word. So what's this concept of salt? What we discussed is it was a double benefit. The first thing is that salt never deteriorates. It never goes off. And not only does it self-preserve, but it preserves things that meats in particular and foodstuffs that are processed with salt. If you look at how biltong is made and pickling, etc., salt is a valued component in order to ensure sustainability. So we said that there were 24 gifts granted to the Kohanim in the temple, 4 of them in the city of Jerusalem, and the last 10 in the provinces of Eretz Israel. So if we look at the 10 gifts of the temple, it's number 1, the meat of the animal chatas offering. I'm not going to go through what each one means because we did it last Saturday night. I'm just giving the summary. And the meat of the bird chatas offering, the meat of the definite asham offering, and the meat of the questionable asham offering, the meat of the communal shalamim offerings, the log of oil of Metzorah, the remainder of the Omer offering, the 2 loaves offering, the panim bread, and the remainder of the mincha offering. Now, so obviously that's in the temple. Now, I've got this dog that's incessantly barking next door. I love animals. I don't want to kill the dog, but I do want to use ether. I do want to use ether and just silence that mutt. So the 4 gifts granted the Kohanim in the city of Jerusalem are the firstborn animals. We hadn't gone through what that means. So the Torah in Shemot, Exodus chapter 13, verse 2, commands that every male firstborn calf, sheep or goat, be sanctified as birth. I mean, Kevin was the one that remembered this concept of the Bechor. So that's when it's consecrated and it's given to a Kohen who offers it as a sacrifice. The Bechor is Kodashim Kalim and may be eaten by the Kohanim throughout the city of Jerusalem. Okay? And in terms of where it's eaten, that's in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 17 and Zevachim 56b. Now, what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm just going to put the share on pause.
The cap is in Arthur's frame.
Yeah. So, yeah. So the firstborn animals. Okay. Now the Bikurim are the first fruits of the 7 species. So they brought to the temple and given to the Kohanim, and that's in Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 26, verse 1 to 11. And they can be eaten by the Kohanim only within the walls of Jerusalem. But they don't have to be eaten in the temple. Now, the portions separated from the Todah offering and from the Nazir's ram. So Todah offering constitutes, guys, of an animal accompanied by 40 loaves of bread. So the breast and the right thigh of the animal and 4 of the breasts are separated and watered to the Kohanim. That's in Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 7, verse 11 to 14 and verse 34. So Todah is an offering of thanksgiving. So basically a 10th is taken off in terms of the breads. 40 loaves, 4 are given to the Kohanim. The breast and right thigh of the animal. pretty straightforward to know. Now, when a Nazir concludes his term of Nazirus, he brings a group of animal offerings, including a ram as a shlamim and a mincha consisting of 20 loaves. And that's in addition to the standard gift that is awarded by the Kohanim for every shlamim, right? So what does that consist of? Again, it's the same, guys. It's the foreleg of the Nazir's shlamim, and it's cooked and then it's given to the Kohanim along with 2 of the loaves. So the Tana counts the Kohanic portions of both the Torah and the Nazir's ram as only one gift, because they're similar in as much as each is a specific portion separated from a Kodashim Kalim offering. And then furthermore, the category portion separated from the Torah includes the Kohanic portion that is separated from every Shalamim offering. So again, the breast and the right thigh. And for a Torah, in essence, is a Shalamim that is accompanied by bread. That's the only difference. Okay? Now that we've stated that, let's just see if anything outstanding. And yeah, there's one more, the hearts of the Kodashim. So what does that consist of? Is the hearts of the Ola, Chatas, and Asham offerings. It's all the hearts. Ola, Chatas, and Asham, which are Kodshe Kodashim, they are the holiest of holies. But the hearts of the Kodashim Kalim are not given to the Kohanim. But they, interestingly enough, are kept by the owners themselves that have sacrificed the animals. So though the Kohanim may use the hearts of the Kodshe Kodashim, even outside Yerushalayim, the Tana classifies this amongst the gifts granted in Jerusalem, okay, rather than to those granted in the provinces, because they are given to the Kohanim only at the temple of Jerusalem. So that's where they're given out. It doesn't, however, classify it amongst the gifts of the temple, because that category includes only items that must be consumed in the temple courtyard, and you can't leave the courtyard with them. So that consists more of foodstuffs, according to Rashi. Okay, so we've just covered. So the first thing was had to be eaten within the temple. Then we just covered the 4 aspects that of the sacrificial meats and fruits, etc., that had to be consumed within the walls of Jerusalem. Now, these are the following that are within the provinces of Eretz Yisrael. You've got Teruma and Truma Maisa. Okay, so when you harvest a crop in Eretz Yisrael, you first have to separate approximately 1/50th as Teruma and give it to the Kohen of his choice. So any member of Israel can choose the Kohen of his choice to give the 1/50th to. Now you then separate 1/10 of the remainder as Maisa and give it to a Levi. Then the Levi in turn separates 1/10 of what he got from the Maisa that he receives and designates it as Teruma Maisa and gives it to the Kohen. Okay, so that details is pretty important. Then you've got Chala. Now, that's the portion separated from the dough of the 5 grains, and it's given to the Kohen. They still do that today, by the way, and people bake their own challahs. The first of the shearings, and we already said that one who shears a sheep in Eretz Yisrael must give the first of the shearings to a Kohen. Torah doesn't specify, guys, the amount that is to be given, but the sages dictate that it should be at least 1/60 of the total yield. Okay, and that's in Devarim chapter 18, verse 4, according to the Rambam. Now, apart from the shearings, you've got the gift portions of the slaughtered animals. And what's that? Well, the Torah in Deuteronomy Devarim chapter 18, verse 3, commands an Israelite who slaughters an ox, a sheep, or a goat for non-sacrificial purposes to give the right foreleg, the jaws, and the abamesim to the Kohen. Now, I thought it was a misspelling from abdomen, but it's not. I'm just going to look up what the word means, guys, because I was meaning to look it up. Just give me 1 second. Apologies. I just want to, because it's not the abdomen. It's a very, very peculiar word.
How do you spell that word?
Just give me 1 second. I'll be 1 sec. It's abomination, like abomination, but like Obama with the word thumb. I'll just go to Google. Guys, give me a second. Never heard of it. Heard of abdomen. So it says the ruminant digestive anatomy and function. It's the true stomach of a ruminant. I'll share my screen because I don't know what the heck it is. I'm telling you, I'm not.
Ruminants like a cow or something that chews the cud.
All right, well, this is
I
the
think.
picture. That's it. Abomism. That's it. Okay, so that's that looks like, yeah. Just try and see if I can pick up a picture. So yeah, it makes
There's
me.
the cow.
Yeah, I don't want to eat a steak for a while. I can tell you that much.
This is making me starving.
Well, that's why you're a natural kind, Gavin.
Yeah,
That's why
exactly.
you can see I have everything red. It doesn't bother me. I don't care if the animal's still moving, which is quite sad. All right, carry on.
Okay, so
That's why I'm a cone. Yeah.
so okay, let me just try and see if there's a bit of clarity because I had a question mark. So they give portions of slaughtered animals, and the notes say the Torah in Devarim chapter 18 verse 3 commands an Israelite who slaughters an ox, sheep, or goat for non-sacrificial purposes, give the right foreleg, the jaws, and the abomasum to the Kohen, whatever that part of the intestines is, I'm not sure. It's a matter of dispute whether this requirement applies only in Eretz Israel, even in the diaspora. So the redemption of the firstborn son, and that obviously the Torah requires a father to redeem his firstborn son when the child reaches the age of 1 month. This is done by paying the sum of 5 selaim to the Kohen, and that's in Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 18, verse 16. What do you call that? A pidyon ben? Was that only in Pesach?
What's that? The where the firstborn's redeemed with coins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
Why
What
did you
you
say
said.
Pesach?
no? Because you've got to unless it stops the firstborn from having to fast during that one
Are you
period.
talking about the Siyum? Then you had the Siyum one.
Yeah.
Erev Pesach, you mean?
Yeah. I think this is the pidyon ben, the redemption of the firstborn son, but that other thing is
I
a
get
Siyum.
exactly with the rabbi for Danny.
Yes.
And it was the cheapest thing I ever bought because my whole life has been so expensive.
Ever since, yeah, with your kids, yeah. So the redemption of the firstborn donkey, which apparently that's in Shmot, Exodus chapter 13, verse 13. Every first issue donkey you shall redeem with a sheep or a goat. The sheep or goat is given to the Kohen. I'm assuming because a donkey is not a kosher animal and a sheep or goat can be sacrificed. So I think that's probably how it would work. I honestly have no idea. The consecrated ancestral field that was sold by the temple treasurer, guys, we did that the other day. So if a man consecrates his ancestral heritage and it's sold by the temple treasurer because he doesn't come up with that financial equivalent, then when the Yovel year arrives, as you know, the field doesn't revert to the original owner but goes to the Kohanim. That we just covered in a daf or so ago. Now the Chayrim field, so we also covered that. We said that it was an Israelite who declares his field Chayrim and he must give it to the Kohanim. I actually don't know too much about that, to be honest. And the robbed property of a convert. And that we've been dealing with a while. Because, guys, although we learned that this property is generally bought to Jerusalem and given to the Kohanim of the Mishmar, if the robber gave it to a Kohen of the Mishmar outside Jerusalem, he has fulfilled his obligation and he can proceed to offer his asham at the temple. So the Tana therefore classifies this as the gift of the provinces, even though it can be given within Eretz Yisrael or out. Okay? Now, guys, it doesn't matter because at any rate, the Brisa lists the robbed property of a convert and refers to it as a gift, because that answered the first question, that were the Kohanim considered like heirs, inheritors, or like gift recipients. If it's gift recipients, or they bought the animal, in that case, you don't have to pay mice on it. If it was inheritors, inherited property, or heirs, you have to pay 10%. So learn from this that the Kohanim are considered gift recipients with respect to the property of a convert that is returned to them. The Gemara says, indeed, learn from this. Okay. So let's just see how long we've got. Okay. All right. So the Mishmar states, if he gave the money to the men of the Mishmar, and then the robber died without offering his asham, his heirs cannot exact the money from their possession. Okay. So whose heirs are we talking about, guys? Guys?
You don't about is this with the Kohanim, when they're talking about the non-Jew, that the convert that dies, that
No, that's exactly why I wanted to get your attention. So I just wanted to set the scene a bit more carefully. The Mishnah just says if he gave the money to the men of the Mishmar, we're saying if the robber, I'm just moving that pronoun because pronouns can be offensive. See, who's to say we don't support woke everyone in every theory? Say pronouns can be offensive.
But it's so tricky when you only
identify as a
give us
robber.
one pronoun. It's like I don't quite know what to do with it. I need multiple.
Yeah, and you know what, Gavin, the truth of it is what we actually not woke, because we're actually providing clarity on what the pronoun is, which is more than what they do. So we're saying, who's this pronoun he? So this pronoun he is the robber. So if the robber gave the money to the men of the Mishmar, and then the robber died without offering his asham, the robber's heirs, not the convert's heirs, because we said this is exactly why the money isn't given to the convert, because he doesn't have it lachik heirs. So obviously the only heirs the Gemara could be talking about in the Mishnah is the heirs of the robber. Can't exact the money back from their possession. Now, why would they want the money back, guys? Why do you think? Kev, can you say over what I'm just bringing forward? Give it a stab.
Why would who want the money back?
What am I talking about here? I know what I'm talking about here. I'm not.
If the money is, it's because it was the robber. It's not clean. It's not.
No. That's not what I'm saying. Arthur, give it over. I noticed a very awkward silence. Okay, Gav, give it over.
No, so I wasn't listening 100%, but I think what you said was something about the heirs of the robber. I think you were talking about.
All right, so let me just say it again, guys. Can you give me?
I just didn't hear you word for word.
No problem. Can you give me a few minutes of your attention? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. I'm going to concentrate properly. I just lost.
So I'm not going to use the Mishnah's pronouns. I'm going to use the actual reference to those pronouns. If the robber gave the money to the men of the Mishmar, and then the robber died without offering his asham, the robber's heirs cannot exact the money from the Kohanim's possession.
Okay.
Now, an inference is drawn from this ruling. Abaya said, learn from this that the return of the robbed money provides half the atonement for the robber's sin. So there are two components, guys, to the atonement process. What are they?
Okay, what they are is the returning of the money and then the ashram offering.
Excellent. And what does each of them deal with?
No. What do you mean deal with? As in,
Okay, so then
As-
return of the money is known as restitution because you're giving back what you took, exactly as Arthur said. And the Asham offering, Arthur, is for what?
is for basically forgiveness from Hashem
For what?
for stealing.
No, for the
the
false.
false oath.
False oath.
Or
Yeah.
that's right, yeah. For lying about stealing, for the
Exactly,
lying as you didn't steal it.
exactly. So, a buyer deduces from the Mishnah that each of these components accomplishes its own share of the process independently of the other. And that's why I had to say restitution is when you pay back the money for the robbery. And the Asham offering is for the false oath. They're two independent processes and two separate sins. Yes, both the sins were caused by greed, but the sin itself is very different from one another. And so cases when the money is returned, but the offering is never bought, the robber has nevertheless attained half the atonement that he sought. Certainly the atonement, Arthur, for the robbery he's attained, but not the atonement for the false oath, because he's not allowed to do it. Money could always be given on his behalf to right the wrong injustice of robbery. However, we're saying here that the heirs cannot do it. In other words, if the heirs decide to give it back and it's another Jew with that is alive, what they're doing is the children are removing from the son. Sorry, the children are removing from the father consequences in the next world with regards to keeping that which is stolen, but they have not provided atonement in that particular case for the restitution because the father never gave it while he was alive. The robber in this case, who was the father, gave it to the men of the Mishmar because he wished to receive atonement for the theft and therefore made restitution before he was alive. Before he died. But he did not bring the Asham offering in time and then he died. So if it would not atone at all, in other words, if making restitution to the Kohen would not affect any atonement, except in conjunction with an Asham offering that you had to do both, then I would say, as Abaya said, that the robber did not ultimately offer his Asham, the money returned to the heirs. What's the reason? He did not give the Kohanim with this in mind. So what is Abaya trying to say? He's saying that the robber surely gave the money to the Kohanim. Why? In order to facilitate his atonement. He was alive at the time. So they stipulated that that gift to them is conditional. He never just gave it to them. It was conditional upon what? Him receiving atonement. So if the payment did not affect atonement at all without the Asham, then in that case, where he died before making the offering of the Asham, the gift would be invalidated retroactively, saying about the restitution for the actual robbery, and the money would have to be returned to his heirs. So that's the proof that if the Kohanim decide to keep it, the men of the Mishmar, the restitution, it means it at least effects a restitution from the deceased, because that was the robber's intention when he paid the principal, even if he did not pay the Asham. It's not dependent upon the acceptance of the Asham, because the offering of the Asham is for the false oath, not the robbery, and therefore they're two separate matters. Otherwise, if you needed both in order to achieve atonement, the men of the Mishnah would have to refund the heirs of the robber back their money, because then the shuvah for robbery wouldn't have taken effect. So we separate the atonement for robbery compared to the false oath. So at least if the robber died between those processes, he could get a partial remedy, certainly a full remedy for the restitution that he made. So the Gemara asks, but if this argument is correct, then the Chatas whose owner dies should revert to his original unconsecrated state. for the owner did not designate the animal as a chatas offering with this in mind. Okay, so do you remember what we learned in the Mishnah, guys? Let me just see if I can share the Mishnah. Give me one sec. Just clicking on it. I'm going to share it on the screen. If the robber gave the money to the Mishmar of Yoharav and the Ashram, okay, we've dealt with that. Yeah. If, however, he gave the money to the men of the Mishmar and then died without offering his Ashram, his heirs cannot exact the money from their possession. Okay, now let's go back to the top part. And we say if the robber was bringing up the money in an Ashram offering to Jerusalem and he died en route, the money shall be given to the robber's sons. Okay, and the Ashram offering shall graze until it develops a blemish. Okay, and it shall be sold and its proceeds placed in the donative offer coffers. However, if he gave the money to the men of the Mishmar and then he died without offering his Ashram, his heirs cannot exact money from the Mishmar. What a man gives to the Kohen shall be his. Okay, so what does that mean? It means basically that if he was on his way to Jerusalem and he was going to give back the principal and Ashram, it's given to the heirs of the robber because he didn't effect any atonement. Too late. If whatever he gave in terms of restitution for the robbed item, he's forgiven on that. The Ashram is not for his false oath. He has to be alive, but at least he gets forgiveness for that part which he pays. But it means the heirs cannot get the money back. And the question is, so that obviously proves this atonement. Otherwise, they'd be granted a refund with regards to the principal. But the Gemara is saying, if this argument is correct, then a chatas whose owner died should revert to its original unconsecrated state. The owner didn't designate the animal as a chatas offering with this in mind. So all we are saying here is that a chatas is a sin offering, and if the owner died and can no longer effect atonement for him, then if he brings the offering, already, not if he dies before bringing the offering, because there's nothing to talk about, it remains to the family. But if he brings it to the temple, to the men of the Mishmar, and then the owner died and he wanted to make a sin offering, but he died before they offered it up, it can't affect atonement for him in the case of a chatas offering. It's different to repaying the principal based on robbery. And therefore, since the owner died, the chatas can't be offered in the temple. But since the animal has been consecrated, that's the reason that the heirs cannot take it for themselves. So rather, the law is that the animal is put to death. But according to Abaya's reasoning, since the sinner designated the animal as a chatas only, according to him, it should be sacrificed to bring him atonement. And then, obviously, once this becomes impossible, its designation as a chatas should be revoked retroactively, and it should revert to its unconsecrated state. So all Abaya is saying is two things. Is firstly, why not the chatas, as if it was the same as the principle that when given, it would be sacrificed because the intent was there. And let's just say the intent wasn't there. Why then can it not go from a state of consecration to unconsecrated, since it cannot be used for its intended purposes? That's what the Gemara wants to bring forward. Now the Gemara answers concerning a chatas whose owner has died. It is a halacha learnt as part of the oral tradition taught by Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai that goes to its death. In other words, since a person consecrated the animal with intent that it should be a valid chatas, it's automatically considered consecrated in a certain holy way. So according to the halacha Moshe Misinai, that in the event that this happens and the owner of the chatas animal dies, the animal shall be put to death. So we're saying, okay, so that's understandable. So then what happens with the asham? Because if a buyer's argument is correct, then an asham whose owner died should revert to its unconsecrated state, because he didn't designate the animal as an asham offering with this in mind. Meaning, very simply, what is the law if an animal? What is the law then? In other words, is it unconsecrated? Does it work the same as a khatas? Or do we accept that he had it for the right intent? So we learn, no, firstly, if he dies, as far as the asham is concerned, but he's already given it as an asham, it doesn't work as an atonement for him. So there's an halacha learned as part of the oral tradition from Moshe at Har Sinai, that any animal which, in the case of a khatas, must die, in the case of an asham, must graze until it develops a blemish and can be redeemed. Okay, so it's different to a khatas and asham. In other words, the proceeds of the redemption are used to, once it's redeemed, it can be sold like an unconsecrated animal. Then the proceeds are used to purchase olah's offerings for the community, and the animal can't be converted to an olah without some form of redemption, since it was already consecrated as an asham, and you can't change intent of the animal. So you can't just redeem it. You've got to let it develop a blemish, and then it's invalid for sacrifice. And then it's sold in order to make an olah offering. Okay. So on that